the building of Embry Pond, although that was the original proposal back in the 80s by United Water or Spring Valley Water at the time, was to build a reservoir in Stony Point. We are looking for alternatives. We're looking for other choices besides expanding our water system, besides increasing capacity of water. What can we do better to use our existing water supply? As you heard earlier, in 2005, Rockland County and United Water and the U.S. Geological Survey entered into a groundwater study of Rockland's groundwater. That was in 2005 to 2010. That study became available just last year. That report by Paul Hysek, maybe some of you have gone to see his presentation. Tonight we have Rusell Urban-Mead with us. Rusell is not a member of the Water Coalition, but we've asked him to come speak as a professional hydrogeologist. He works for the Chazen Companies, which is an engineering firm, I believe. He can tell you about that. We've asked him to give his thoughts as to what alternatives or better choices, what are the better, smarter choices for Rockland? Is expansion of our water system with a desalinization plant our best option? Or is there more that we can do in Rockland to better use our existing water resources? So I will give the microphone to Rusell.
You guys have been very patient this evening, so I'm gonna be brief. I'm Rusell Urban-Mead. I'm a hydrogeologist at the Chazen Companies. Not close enough? Is that better? Thank you, back. Yeah. Thank you, back, bro. I'm Rusell Urban-Mead. I'm a hydrogeologist at the Chazen Companies. It's been a pleasure to be here this evening. I don't know enough about the Desal plant to take a position on it. Boo hiss, I'm sorry. And my company doesn't either, but I'm a hydrogeologist who has worked for 18 years working with municipalities a little further north on water resource plans, water resource planning opportunities. I've put in a lot of water supply wells, and I've done a lot of remediation work. And so when I hear about a situation like this, my first question is, are the aquifers being used to their best effect? You know, I guess Dr. Seuss's Lorax spoke for the trees, and I find myself speaking for the aquifers. And so those key questions that come up all the time are, what are our recharge rates? What is the precipitation doing? How much water is it putting back in the aquifers? And are we taking what we can in a sustainable way? I have a lot of respect for Paul Hysek. I work in the private sector. He's worked for USGS. He's read my work. I've read his work. He works on big projects because that's the footprint of USGS's assignments. I work on small assignments, so we complement each other very well. And I like the work that he does. I've read it. You know, Patsy did a nice job summarizing some of the key things from the recent study, so I'm just going to hit a couple key points. One of them feeds back to a paper that I published recently with Scott Cuppett from the Estuary Program that took, among various positions, the importance of water conservation, and also in that paper expounded upon the fact that relative to many parts of the world, we are unbelievably lucky with our substantial water capacity opportunities. There are parts of the world that would be so excited to get 48 inches of rain a year. There are so many places. Think of so many places that get by on 5 or 10 or 15 inches. We have over 40, and even during that miserable drought of 2001 and 2002, when I was monitoring wells throughout Dutchess County, because we have a whole monitoring program for Dutchess County set up. That's where I live, I come to my park. Even under those circumstances, the aquifers were not giving up. And even under those circumstances that we had in 01 and 02, we had so much more water than so many parts of the world. So the question is, can we be smarter with that water? Some of the key things that I can just summarize quickly from Paul Hysek's work, I've already spoken to. He agrees. He summarized how much water we have in terms of precipitation. A point that was made earlier today is his review of the long-term well records here in Rockland County show that overall the aquifers are not being overtapped. They're not declining. We are not in Kansas with the Ogallala Aquifer that drops a foot or two every year because the water was recharged during the glacier period and it ain't coming back. Here, every year, the rain puts water back in. So as long as we keep the bank account balanced, where what we take out in a given year is roughly equal to what we put in a given year, it works. So we have a sustainable system if we learn to work with it. Some of the wells that are being used are at their practical limit. That's not a bad thing. We put in water supplies wells all the time. The purpose of those wells is to yield a particular maximum amount. If you pump more than that, yes, you'll draw the water down to the level of the pump, and that means you've reached the limit of that particular straw. That doesn't mean the aquifer is overstressed. It means in that one location you've taken out what can be taken. So for there to be wells at their practical limit doesn't mean that the whole area is overpumped. Something like a third of the central area here in the Newark Basin in this county is under the influence of those pumping wells. That means that some of the streams that flow across that surface do lose some flow to those aquifers. That is a fact of life when you have high capacity pumping rates. Not necessarily a good situation for those streams, but overall, what Paul summarized was that the overall taking from the stream systems was between 10 and 20% for most of the systems, which leaves a fair amount in these streams. So my takeaway is that you have aquifer formations that are at least currently being used in a moderately sustainable manner. That takes me to what I love, which is actually the intersection of hydrogeology and planning. And there are things that can be done at the municipal level, and there are things that can be done at a county level. And I would put them in the category, I like acronyms, so let's work with CAP, C-A-P. C would be standing for conserve, A would stand for augment, and P would stand for protect. There are things under each one of those categories. Conserving water. Instead of using old-fashioned irrigation systems, switch to drip. And if you have something that doesn't need fancy plants, go to native plantings and then you don't irrigate at all. That's conservation. Fixtures. Replace the fixtures with things that use less water, whether it's toilets or washing machines or all sorts of industrial equipment. Water conservation is all out there. And honestly, if you price things correctly, people move towards conservation. Look what we're all doing with our cars right now. Leak detection is a big one, right? There was a discussion earlier today about leak detection. It's just tragic when water gets pumped out of the ground with great impact on streams. There are big projects like this being evaluated, and large percentages of water are being leaked out of the pipes because leak protection isn't under control. It's really a shame. Other parts of the world that do not have 40+ inches of rain a year use cisterns. My house in Hyde Park has a cistern. It was an old farmhouse, 1790s farmhouse. There's a cistern under the roof eaves, and the roof water is collected, and it's supplemental water for the dry period. It kept the vegetable garden. Cisterns are not used around here, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be. The MS4 program. Coincidentally, you know, the nice thing about the whole stormwater management control program is that the flip side of it is that it promotes, if you use them, infiltration practices. Infiltration practices are those practices that put water back in the ground. Once you put it back in the ground, it takes so long for it to get to the river systems that if they're in the right places, they can be picked up by wells. So the MS4 program has actually been a positive contributor to the whole issue. And the last thing you want to do is make sure that your sewer systems aren't picking up shallow groundwater, from infiltration of shallow groundwater, because then those sewer pipelines become conduits for short-circuiting groundwater out of the area. And in this area where all of your sewage goes all the way down to the bay and discharge, that's just water wasted from the local groundwater systems. So that's conserve, C for conserve in my cap. Augment. We don't augment very much in this region. We don't do it in the East Coast because we are, relatively speaking, water rich. But in a situation like this, what I'm hearing is a situation where augmentation would make a lot of sense. My little farmhouse, our well is only 150 feet deep. I'm not on a municipal system, I have a domestic well. 150 feet deep is not a very deep well. I live on a shallow sloped hillside, and I figure what I need to do is I need to get a little bit more water back in the ground. I used a couple wheelbarrows full of dirt, and I put 2 or 3 gentle berms that are about 2 or 3 inches high into my lawn, and then the grass grew up and sort of took them over. What happens now is when the water comes down the hillside, if it's a ½ inch rain or a ¼ inch rain or a ¾ inch rain, it just pools up, just 2 or 3 inches deep behind that little berm, and then a day or two later it's all sunk into the ground. I have augmented recharge to my aquifer. This can be done so easily over such a large area. It's a simple augmentation technique. The biggest missing opportunity that I see from this whole discussion is that water is only used once here. If you have a community, and I don't know how to retrofit this, I understand the dilemma, but a system that exports all the water to a wastewater treatment plant directly into the bay is not keeping water up on the landscape. Septic systems put it back. My daughter scolded me the other night, "Dad, you didn't fix the sink, the dripping sink." I said, "So I understand that's a problem, but tell me where the real problem is. Where's the water coming from?" She said, "The well." Where's it going? To the septic system. My leaky sink was basically wasting energy because otherwise the water was just coming out the well, going down the septic system. It was still in the same local environment. So there's an opportunity here, I think, between state health and local health units to look at gray water recycling systems where some of this water that you're sending to sewer could go to backyard infiltration basins. Because you have water that, this is once used, you're taking it out and you're sending it far, far away. You're removing it from the area where the water, the aquifer is in fact, would benefit from having some of that water put back. Septic systems, gray water, infiltration practices, so many new green infrastructure programs have berms between the parking areas, disconnected roof leaders. So many programs are designed to try to put water back in the aquifer. That's all augmentation. So conservation, augmentation, and the last is protection. Now, you also want it to be potable. You want to pump that groundwater out and know that it's God's beautiful water. And the best way to do that when so many people also live right around those wells is to do everything possible to keep them clean. That means looking at the road salting programs, using thin brines as opposed to salt, using strategic de-icing programs where you can so that you don't have chloride accumulation in groundwater. One opportunity that municipalities here would have is that we've worked on an aquifer protection ordinance that municipalities can adopt, and it's what I call a gap filler. There are state programs, there are federal programs that take care of particular contaminant sources, and then there are the ones that fell through the gaps. They're the things that no program currently gets. This aquifer protection ordinance that your municipality can adopt goes in either as part of zoning or as a standalone local ordinance, is something that fills the gaps. And it has a bunch of special use permits, it has a couple exclusions, it provides heightened protection for the wellhead recharge areas, and it provides broad protection for the entire municipality. It's an important part of the arsenal. If you don't have protection for the aquifer, then some of the wells go out of use, not because there isn't water, but because it's not potable. And my boss always likes to say wet water is better than no water. However, if it's got some contaminant issues, it becomes less desirable and it certainly becomes more costly. And so you really want to have the protection in place. So speaking as a consulting hydrogeologist, I'm sort of here talking to the issue of practical solutions. I don't know the exact math of all of the very, very interesting and important things I've heard this evening, but I know that there are ways that aquifers can be protected at a high level. And maybe that's a good place for me to stop.
I like that Russell mentioned that he has a cistern in his home. I have one in my home, and all the drain pipes from my gutters go down into a dry well, where at some point if I want to pump that water out and use it to water my garden or something like that, I can do it. Every house should have one as far as I'm concerned. It's old technology. But something that really not only saves you money from not paying for that water, but also tends to reduce the amount of water you're sending down to your neighbor and flooding them out. Many of us know, I like to usually start this presentation off by saying some people think we don't have enough water, and some think we have too much water in all the wrong places. We know what happened over this last year with flooding. I mean, so we have all this flooding problem, and yet we're being told we don't have enough water. Well, that points out to me an important problem, and that is we're not managing our water very well in Rockland County. And that's one of the things we're hoping that the county legislature, the county executive will begin to address a better water policy for Rockland County. Before we go on to the questions, I would like to invite up Rita Louie, who is the she's the assistant mayor, the deputy mayor of the village of Pomona.
Thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is such an important issue. It's the most important issue. We are at a turning point. We're turning a corner right now, right here in Rockland County. This is the most important issue that has faced us in decades. If this plan goes through, this is going to be a disaster for Rockland County. It is going to be detrimental to our property values, and it affects every single man, woman, and child in this county. It is not a partisan issue. It transcends political parties. It transcends race, religion, creed, town, village, and anywhere else in this county. Any other issue, this is the most important issue. I truly believe that you all came out tonight because you want the information, because you feel concerned about it, because you want to know what you can do. If you don't want Hudson River coming out of your faucet, you need to act now. You need to help us. These people on this coalition have been working for 4 years, doing the research, putting the information together, trying to find out what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. They've worked their tails off. They've come up with this amazing panel of people who have the information, who are going to tear apart the DEIS, who are going to go out March 6th and speak on the technical issues, on the scientific issues. We need, as Rocklanders, to stand together as one Rockland County and tell our elected officials and the DEC and United Water that we're not going to take this. We are not going to have Hudson River water shoved down our throats. We need to back up this panel behind me. We need to back them up by coming out in mass. We have to come to rallies, we have to show up on March 6th and speak our minds, and we need to get the petition signed by as many people as possible. We're looking at hoping to get at least 10,000 signatures by the end of April. I'll be in the back hallway on your way out tonight after the question and answer period, and I'll have blank petitions. If everyone in this room takes one sheet and makes a few copies of it and gets their neighbors to sign it and returns it to me, we will have our 10,000 signatures and then some. So if everybody can commit to do just that simple thing, we can beat this. The second thing I want to say is, yes, George touched on it, that this panel has been, laying everything out of their pockets. Please make a donation on your way out. Also, help support this panel, help support this fight by reaching into your pockets. The last thing I want to say, again, this is coming out of your faucet. This is in your hands, literally and figuratively. It's in your bathtubs. It's in your drinking water. It's in our lives. We need to do this for Rockland County. We need to do this together. And we need to do this now, not next week, not next month, right now. So please take a petition home with you tonight, everybody, and thank you again for coming tonight.